There is so much financial information out there that it gets very confusing to know what you actually need to do. What you actually need to do if you want to improve your finances. So today, as someone who works in finance myself, I'm going to be walking you through the first 5 financial moves that you should make if you want to improve your finances, if you want to get better with money. Okay? Where is your money actually going? If I asked you where your last £100 went or where you spent your last £100, would you be able to give me an answer? Be honest, would you be able to give me an answer? Because if I asked most people that, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. And this is a problem because you can't control something that you aren't aware of. You can't control something that you aren't tracking. It's very, very easy for us to live on autopilot. We work, we get paid, we spend our money. But spending without intention isn't freedom. It's self-sabotage. That's all it is. Almost think of your finances like a bathtub. Your income is the water that's coming through the tap, but your expenses are the drain. And if more is going out than is coming in, the bathtub will never fill up. Or in other words, you will never have enough extra money at the end of each month to save or to invest or to even build an emergency fund. So the goal here is very, very simple. We just want to make more money than we are spending. That's all we want to do at this point. And this starts with first actually looking at your bank statement and first looking at your spending habits and your spending behavior. Literally what I did is I looked at my bank statements for the last 3 months and I thought, okay, Mahad, you're spending your money like this. It shouldn't be like this. We can fix this. We can optimize this. We can improve this. That's the exact same thing that you need to do. Because once you pinpoint where your money is going, then you can begin improving it and fixing it and optimizing it. Where here we really want to aim to save at least 15% of our income each month. That's the minimum goal. Build your emergency fund. Okay, if you were to lose your job today, if you were to lose your income today, do you have enough money to live your life and to survive for the next few months? Do you? Because if your answer to that question is no, then you really need to listen to me right now. Life is so unpredictable. Anything can happen at any point in time. You could lose your job. You could have emergency medical bills. You could have a family emergency. Anything could happen where you need extra money. And that's why we have an emergency fund. That's why you have to build an emergency fund, because that's basically your financial safety net if anything goes wrong. Where the goal here is to essentially save 3 to 6 months worth of our living expenses. So 3 to 6 months worth of all of our essential bills. So this would include rent, mortgage, transport costs, groceries, food costs, all of the things that you basically need to live and to survive. That's what this covers. And I know this sounds like common sense or it sounds very intuitive, but I really need to drill this in, because whenever you don't have an emergency fund, what happens is that if there is a financial surprise, if you need to pay for something extra, that situation can very, very easily turn into a crisis, because you don't have extra money, so you might have to borrow high interest debt, where an emergency fund stops one bad month from becoming one bad year. That's simply what it does, and that's why it's so important. Pay off your high interest debt. I read this statistic recently that said around 84% of UK adults have some form of debt. So this might be a loan or a credit card, for example. And I find it so interesting because debt is so common, but a lot of us feel embarrassed or shameful when it comes to debt, when a lot of people are in debt or have debt of some sort. But the thing here is that not all debt is created equally. Because if you have high interest debt like payday loans, high interest credit cards, certain types of overdrafts, certain types of loans, these things will quietly kill your finances without you even realizing it. I will be so honest with you guys. I remember a few years ago when I was in university, when I was studying, I had a credit card, and this credit card, I was ending up paying around £100 per month, not to pay down the credit card, but just on interest every single month. Do you understand how crazy that is? And that's exactly what a lot of these debt or these credit card companies want. They want you to be paying the most amount of interest and for the longest amount of time, as that's how they make profit. They make profit from you paying interest. So think of it like this. Paying off your high interest debt is one of the highest guaranteed returns that you can get on your money. Where if your credit card charges you 20% on interest, for example, you paying it off is essentially kind of like you getting a 20% return on your money. It's not exactly the same, but the principle here is that you won't have to pay that 20% interest. So that's why you should always prioritize paying off your high interest debt. It's the easiest win for a lot of people. So what I want you to do is, if you are someone who's in debt, don't feel ashamed about it. A lot of people are in debt, but I want you to list all of the debts that you have and list them in order from the highest interest debt to the lowest interest debt. And your focus should be on paying the highest interest debt first and working your way down the ladder. Invest with intention. A lot of the time, a lot of financial advice will tell people to invest and start investing early. So put your money into the stock market each month and just let it quietly compound. That's what a lot of advice says. And this advice isn't wrong. It's mathematically correct. It is, because compounding is true. Compounding does work. But practically speaking, this advice is slightly incomplete, especially if you're earlier in your career and earlier in your life. Because when you're young, your most underrated financial asset isn't the money that you have saved, but it's your risk tolerance. Even, for example, when I was working in wealth management, where we were making investments for millionaires and billionaires, the first thing that we always consider when thinking about an investment strategy is the age of the person. Because if a 20k investment goes wrong when you're 25, then you essentially have years and decades to recover. But that same loss at the age of 55 is a completely different conversation. So yes, start investing. It's important to start investing and investing early. And index funds are a great way to build wealth. I love index funds. But don't just let your view and vision of investing just be limited to getting a stocks and shares ISA and just investing in the S&P 500 based index. Like, don't limit your view of investing to just that. As if you truly want to kind of build a level of wealth, you need to start thinking bigger. For example, property historically has been like an amazing way of building wealth over the last few centuries in the UK, for example. Or even side businesses. A side business that is done well can generate more return than any stock market index can. And these are just a few examples, but the point I'm trying to make is that when it comes to your investing and your investing strategy, you really need to ask yourself, what investments make sense for me at this point in time, based on my age, my risk tolerance, what I want to get out of life, where I want to be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Ask yourself these questions, because that answer looks completely different for everyone. And I think this leads me very nicely onto the last point. As everything I've discussed, I've talked about budgeting, investing, paying off high interest debt. All of this stuff becomes 10 times easier when you make more money, when your income grows. Because in personal finance, unfortunately, we only have like 2 choices that we can make. We can either make more money and increase our income, or we can spend less. Where the problem with spending less is that it's limited. You physically cannot cut every single expense out of your life. But with your earning, theoretically speaking, it's limitless. There's no limit on it. Where the simplest and most direct way to earn more money and to make more money is simply by becoming more valuable in the economy. They like to use that word, but valuable. And by valuable, I mean learning a skill that is in demand, or getting a certification that helps you earn more money, or even getting and pivoting into a better paying industry than the one that you're already in now. Some people even leverage and they use what they know and their experience to make more money by doing things like freelancing, consulting. And you don't need to do all of these things. That's not what I'm trying to say. But you really need to think about your skill set and, once again, what you want to get out of your life, and pick a direction and start moving in that direction. As discipline is amazing for protecting your money, but you can't protect money that you don't have and you aren't making. You just can't. Thank you for watching this video, guys. I hope you found it valuable. If you would like more videos like this, make sure you comment down below, because we are going to get our money up, not our money up.